He raised his hand, thinking no one would stop him. A uniform, a badge, a false sense of superiority, and in front of dozens of witnesses, he struck her. Not just anyone, but U.S. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. The room went silent. Cameras froze. Time slowed. What followed in the next 4 minutes was not what he, or anyone, expected. Welcome to Talecraft, where every story uncovers truth. First time here? Like, share, and subscribe. What would you do if you were in her shoes? On this channel, we don't just retell moments. We relive them, dissect them, and find the soul in each event. Today's story is more than just politics or conflict. It's about power, race, and how one woman's poise shattered decades of systemic silence in just minutes. Jasmine Crockett didn't just defend herself, she made history. This wasn't a brawl. This was calculated brilliance. It wasn't just about her. It became about all of us. Every viewer. Every witness. Every unheard voice. It started with a town hall, a routine civic event meant to foster communication. Jasmine Crockett showed up as a leader ready to speak truth to power. But one officer, emboldened by bias and unchecked aggression, decided she didn't belong there. Words turned hostile. Tension escalated. And then, the slap. In a single, disgraceful motion, everything changed. But Jasmine didn't fall. She didn't flinch. Instead, she rose with fire in her voice, law in her heart, and calm fury in her eyes. This wasn't just about a slap. It was about centuries of disrespect packaged in one swing of a hand. The room may have frozen, but Jasmine didn't. Her response, raw, powerful, eloquent, peeled back the mask of authority and exposed what it meant to fight racism without violence. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the truth. In just 4 minutes, she transformed public shame into undeniable triumph. And the world watched, stunned, inspired, and awakened. Why does this matter? Because silence protects the powerful, and Jasmine shattered that silence with words. Because too many still believe a badge justifies hate. Because in a world on edge, we need leaders who fight smart, not loud. This isn't just a viral moment, it's a blueprint. A warning. A lesson. In the next sections, we'll break down exactly what happened, how she responded, and why her actions echoed far beyond that room. Stay with us. This story is just getting started. It was a blistering Thursday evening in Dallas. The room inside the community center buzzed with concerned citizens, folding chairs, and half-eaten donuts at the back. The town hall was supposed to address police reform, and Jasmine Crockett, bold, composed, and unapologetically vocal, was the guest speaker. Known for her unapologetic stance on civil rights, she had earned a reputation for dismantling corruption with poise. But the moment she entered the room, the tension shifted. One cop, Officer Randall Mertz, known for his temper and intolerance, glared from the back of the room. Everyone else sensed the storm coming. Jasmine began speaking, laying out statistics and demanding accountability. "We are not anti-police," she said firmly. "We are anti-brutality. There is a difference." The room nodded in agreement except for one, Officer Mertz. His body stiffened, arms crossed, face twitching. He interrupted her mid-sentence, yelling, "Why don't you go back to where you came from?" Gasps filled the hall. Jasmine paused. She tilted her head, gave him a half-smile, and responded, "Sir, I came from right here. Born and raised. Unlike your decency, I never left." The crowd murmured. Mertz's hand twitched near his belt. The insult had landed. Crockett, calm but assertive, continued her speech. She called for retraining, oversight, and justice for recent local victims. Officer Mertz grew louder, shouting over her words, accusing her of disrespecting the force. She stopped and asked, "Why are you so offended by facts? Unless the truth hits too close to home." That was the match. Mertz stormed forward, knocking over a chair. 2 deputies tried to stop him, but he pushed past. "You don't talk to me like that," he screamed. Jasmine stood her ground. She didn't run. She didn't cower. That's when the unthinkable happened. He slapped her. The sound of the slap cracked across the room. It wasn't just a physical blow, it was symbolic. A white officer striking a black congresswoman. A man in uniform trying to silence a woman with authority. The room went dead silent. Jasmine didn't fall. Her cheek stung, but her pride was intact. Cameras captured it. Phones recorded it. No one moved, waiting to see what she'd do. In that one vile motion, Mertz had revealed more about the system than any speech ever could. But Jasmine wasn't about to let it end there. She adjusted her blazer and then she spoke. Jasmine turned slowly to face the officer. Her voice didn't crack. She didn't yell. She simply said, "Thank you, officer." You just proved my point better than I ever could. The crowd gasped. Even those who doubted her now looked on in stunned admiration. You wear that badge but you forgot your duty. You forgot your oath. You think fear makes you powerful, but it makes you weak. Mertz tried to interrupt, but the audience silenced him with their disapproval. She had seized control. Her pain became her platform. Her voice became sharper than any weapon he could carry. By now, reporters who had been passively covering the event were live streaming. One woman in the front row whispered, "She's about to destroy him." Crockett continued, "You hit me to silence me, but what you did was amplify the truth. You don't protect, you dominate. You don't serve, you suppress. And I am not afraid of you." Officer Mertz backed away, suddenly aware of the cameras, the witnesses, the badge growing heavier on his chest. His allies? Silent. His department's reputation? Crumbling. Jasmine didn't need backup. Her courage was enough. And the 4 minutes that followed would make history. What followed was one of the most powerful monologues ever delivered in a town hall. Jasmine called out every silent enabler, every unchecked abuse, every act of racial bias covered up by reports. She turned the officers' violence into fuel. She didn't seek revenge, she sought justice. And justice was listening. Mertz was escorted out by his own fellow officers. The slap was real, but so was the awakening. This wasn't the end. It was the spark. In Section 3 we'll walk through those 4 unforgettable minutes, and the unforgettable words that would dismantle a career and inspire a nation. For a moment after the slap, it felt like time had frozen. The air was heavy with disbelief. People stood still, unsure of whether they had just witnessed an assault or a metaphor playing out in real time. Officer Mertz was breathing heavily, his chest rising and falling with rage. But Jasmine Crockett didn't falter. Slowly, she turned back toward the microphone, straightened her posture, and placed her hand on the lectern. Her cheek was red, but her voice was clear. "Let me show you what dignity looks like," she said. What followed wasn't just a comeback, it was a reckoning. Jasmine looked directly at Officer Mertz, but her words were meant for everyone. "This is what happens when a system is unchecked," she said slowly. "When power is handed without accountability. When silence replaces justice." Her voice cut through the stunned quiet like a blade. People began to raise their phones again, not out of habit but necessity. They knew. Something historic was unfolding. She wasn't just speaking for herself anymore. She was standing for every woman silenced, every black voice doubted, every victim of institutional violence. And she wasn't angry, she was surgical, deliberate, and devastatingly articulate. "You think that badge gives you the right to strike me?" she asked, voice unwavering. "No. It gives you the responsibility to serve me. To protect this community. To uphold the law. But here you are, breaking it, in public, in uniform, and without shame." Officer Mertz stood stone still now, the fire in him shrinking. The audience had turned. Jasmine's words were working like a spotlight, illuminating the rot that so many had ignored. "You didn't hit me because you were afraid. You hit me because I scared you. Because I challenged your illusion of dominance." Jasmine's tone grew sharper. "Let me be clear, you may wear that badge but I earned this mic." She tapped the microphone gently. "I earned my place in Congress. I earned my education. I earned every right to speak here today. You tried to silence me with your hand, but all you did was amplify my voice." Her eyes locked onto the crowd now, including young girls in the front row, mothers in the back, veterans leaning forward. To every woman who's ever been told to sit down, every black child told to behave or else, this is your moment too. She raised her hand to the audience. "We are not weak. We are not powerless. We are not victims. We are survivors, truth-tellers, change-makers." Her voice echoed with rhythm now, like a sermon, like protest, like revolution. "We've been slapped for centuries, not just physically but economically, socially, systemically. And every time we've stood back up." She glanced again at Officer Mertz. "You should be thankful I am not the stereotype you imagine. Because I believe in due process. I believe in justice. And that's why I won't retaliate with violence. I'll retaliate with truth." As Jasmine paused to take a breath, someone in the crowd yelled, "Say it louder." And she did. This slap wasn't personal, it was generational. But here's the thing about history, it has a way of watching. And it's watching you, Officer Mertz. Reporters typed frantically. Phones shook from the sheer emotion in the room. "You think you've humiliated me. But you've only revealed yourself. This country is changing and your kind of policing has no place in our future." And in that moment the hashtag #SlapButtStanding was born. Within minutes, it would be trending nationwide. She turned her attention to the city officials present. I demand that this officer be relieved of duty pending investigation, immediately. A low murmur turned into applause. I demand body cam footage be released, a public apology issued, and community oversight of every officer on the street. She pointed out into the crowd. If you let this pass, you are complicit. If you stay silent, you are guilty. Justice isn't something we wait for, it's something we demand. Several council members nodded. Jasmine had just shifted from victim to advocate to catalyst, all in under 4 minutes. Her voice softened now, but it became more powerful. I'm someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's representative. But even if I had none of those titles, I'd still be human. And no human deserves what just happened. She paused and looked at the little girl in the audience who had tears in her eyes. Sweetheart, I want you to remember this moment. Not because of the slap, but because of the stand. You're allowed to speak up. You're allowed to fight back. And you are never, ever alone. The girl nodded. A single tear ran down Jasmine's cheek, but she smiled through it. People stood. Applause broke out, first in ripples then in waves. Even some off-duty officers clapped, quietly but unmistakably. Officer Mertz was led out of the hall by Internal Affairs, head low, face pale. He was no longer the face of order. He was the face of disgrace. Jasmine turned back to the podium one last time and said, "Let this moment be the beginning. Not just of accountability but of rebuilding trust, from the ground up." She stepped down, but the echo of her words lingered in the room, vibrating with power. No one would forget those 4 minutes. Outside, news vans were already swarming. Protesters and supporters alike chanted her name. That 4-minute response was replayed across major networks, analyzed by scholars, praised by leaders. But for Jasmine Crockett, it wasn't about fame. It was about fire, controlled, precise, and purposeful. She'd taken a moment of violence and turned it into a mirror, forcing a nation to look at itself. In the next section, we'll explore the fallout, the investigation, the public outcry, and how one woman's courage triggered reforms far beyond a Dallas town hall. Because this story was just getting started, the courtroom, once simmering with hushed whispers and side glances, was now a live wire of tension. Jasmine Crockett stood like a thunderstorm in heels, calm on the outside, but her presence electrified the room. The officer, still cocky despite the slap he'd delivered earlier, leaned against the witness stand with a smug grin. But the moment Jasmine took out a slim file and placed it on the table, everything shifted. "Your Honor," she began, her voice clear and sharp, "before we proceed, I'd like to submit this evidence for the record." The judge raised an eyebrow but nodded. What followed stunned the court. Body cam footage that hadn't been included in discovery. It showed the cop mocking Jasmine with racial slurs minutes before the slap. Gasps rippled across the room. The prosecution blinked. The officer's attorney tried to object, but it was too late. Pandora's box had been opened, and Jasmine was just getting started. Jasmine took control with the poise of a veteran litigator. "Officer Blake," she said, walking slowly toward him, "do you recall the exact words you said to me before you assaulted me in this courtroom?" Blake stammered. I don't remember." She clicked play on another clip. "Maybe this will jog your memory." The recording revealed him calling her, "just another loud black chick." Audible groans filled the air. The judge leaned forward. "Officer, is that your voice?" Blake, suddenly pale, nodded. "Yes." Jasmine didn't need to raise her voice. Truth did the shouting for her. "Now tell me, do you think slapping a congresswoman is appropriate conduct for someone sworn to uphold the law?" The silence was damning. "No," Blake muttered. She followed with, "Is it standard police training to silence black women through violence?" He couldn't respond. His image, the tough cop with power, had been dismantled in mere minutes. The judge, now visibly perturbed, requested a short recess. Reporters fled the room, typing away feverishly. Jasmine sat quietly, not triumphant but resolved. For her, this wasn't about ego, it was about precedent. About what happens when those in power overstep, and assume their victims will stay silent. When court resumed, the tone had shifted entirely. Blake's attorney, now visibly sweating, offered to settle the civil case quietly. But Jasmine wasn't interested in silence. "No," she said firmly. "The people deserve to see this through." And so she pressed on, submitting further evidence. Testimony from other black professionals harassed by Blake, complaints that had mysteriously vanished from the department's records. Piece by piece, she laid bare a culture of corruption, racism, and intimidation. And the court saw it. All with no filter. No courtroom theatrics, just cold, hard truth wielded by a woman who refused to be underestimated. As Jasmine delivered her closing remarks, even the judge leaned back, visibly moved. "We cannot fix a broken system by hiding its cracks," she said. "We fix it by naming the problem, holding it accountable, and refusing to be afraid." A murmur of applause began among the spectators but was quickly hushed. Still, the message landed. The officer sat in shame, stripped of his arrogance, and for the first time, aware that Jasmine Crockett wasn't just some woman to be shoved aside. She was a force. When the court adjourned for the day, Jasmine walked out not just as a victim or a politician, but as a leader who demanded respect and got it, on her terms. Cameras flashed. Journalists flooded the hallway. But she said nothing. She had already said everything that needed to be said, in just 4 powerful minutes. The days following the courtroom showdown were anything but quiet. News outlets exploded with coverage. Hashtags like #JusticeForJasmine and #BlakeTheBulldog trended worldwide. Footage of the slap, the evidence Jasmine revealed, and her unwavering courtroom dominance looped endlessly on social media. People weren't just reacting, they were rising. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse, not just demanding accountability for one slap, but justice for years of unchecked police misconduct. Jasmine remained poised throughout, refusing interviews but issuing one statement: "I wasn't just standing up for me. I was standing up for every black woman told to sit down, be quiet, and take it." Her words became a rallying cry. Activists printed it on signs. Teens painted murals. Celebrities quoted her. This wasn't just a legal victory, it was cultural, political, personal. Jasmine Crockett had shattered a ceiling, and everyone was looking up through the cracks she left behind. Behind the scenes, institutions scrambled to recover. The police department placed Officer Blake on immediate unpaid suspension pending formal investigation. Internal Affairs launched a wide-ranging probe into complaints against him, and those who covered them up. Within 2 weeks, 3 officers resigned. Jasmine, meanwhile, received offers from legal foundations, civil rights organizations, and even political PACs asking her to lead initiatives. But she didn't rush. Instead, she met quietly with victims who had come forward since the trial. A black teacher, slapped by a traffic cop in front of her students. A Latina nurse, threatened during a routine stop. Jasmine wasn't interested in being a viral hero, she was building something deeper. A coalition. One fueled not by rage alone, but by strategy, solidarity, and the demand for lasting reform. Every message she gave, every move she made, whispered the same silent promise: "This won't stop with me." The courtroom slap, as disgraceful as it had been, became a pivot point. Politicians who once dismissed Jasmine now sought her counsel. One senator even publicly apologized for underestimating her. In local communities, legislation began taking shape. Bills focused on police transparency, updated body cam laws, and harsher penalties for misconduct during court proceedings. Jasmine used her platform to push these forward, not by grandstanding but by showing her scars, visible and invisible. "The law," she said in one fiery town hall, "must protect us in the courtroom, not be weaponized against us." Her presence redefined not just what justice looked like, but who was allowed to demand it. And in doing so, she inspired a generation of young women, especially young women of color, to enter law, to take the mic, to never apologize for their voice, their power, or their anger. By year's end, Jasmine Crockett had been nominated for several civil rights awards. But she remained grounded, often returning to the courthouse steps where it all began. "This isn't about me," she would say to young girls who came to see her. "It's about what we do when the system pushes us down." That slap may have been meant to silence her, but it did the opposite. It sparked a reckoning, a movement, a rewriting of who holds power in courtrooms, in politics, and in public memory. Officer Blake? He was stripped of his badge, formally charged, and now faced his own trial. But Jasmine never mentioned his name again. Not out of fear, but because he was no longer the story. The story was the woman who stood up, unshaken, with fire in her voice and history on her side, and turned 4 minutes into a legacy.